I just began to record it.
Okay, wonderful. All right, perfect. So I'll begin in just a moment.
Great.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Robert Walker. I am the National Director for Hasbara Fellowships Canada. Welcome to this webinar. We have people from United States, Canada, I believe Israel as well, and perhaps elsewhere on this call. We have a great topic and a great speaker this evening. One of the areas in Israel advocacy, which I think is not as known among Israel advocates as it needs to be, and education starts at home within, is the Palestinian Liberation Organization Charter. We talk sometimes about the Hamas Charter and some of the very dangerous and very anti-Semitic and very inflammatory texts that we see in the Palestinian Authority textbooks, in the educational materials coming from the mosques, etc. And sometimes we look at Hamas as being the more extreme version of the Palestinian Authority. But tonight we're going to talk a little bit in terms of, is the Palestinian Authority a partner for peace? What's really in their codifying founding documents, and is this something that perhaps is worth internally, certainly for us to know, and how we can go about sharing that. Just before we begin, as I mentioned, if everyone can make sure to mute themselves, and then we can begin. So our speaker this evening is Mr. Bill Langfan. Mr. Langfan was born in 1922 in New York City. He graduated George Washington High School, New York City, 1939, University of South Carolina, Cornell Law School, and attended the Sorbonne in the summer of 1945. And if everyone please mute themselves, guys. Everyone please mute themselves. We have a couple people who have not muted themselves. Thank you. So Mr. Langfan served in the U.S. Army Service Anti-Aircraft Unit from 43 to 45, including the Battle of Britain. He shot against V-1 German rockets, landed in Normandy, fought across France, Belgium, including the Battle of the Bulge, as well as Germany, to a few miles within the German-Czech border. Throughout the war, Mr. Langfan served as an interpreter for his Army unit, where he was fluent in French and Yiddish. He received the French Legion of Honor Medal for his service in France. Most of his adult life has been spent in the real estate business. He started his own successful real estate firm in 1960, which is now run by his children. He has created 6 permanent endowments. 5 are annual oratorical contests on the subject of the U.S. Constitution at University of South Carolina, University of Chicago, and Yeshiva University, as well as Cardozo Law School and Horace Mann High School. He has donated 2 ambulances to Magen David Adom and contributes to Israeli universities and institutions. In 2011, in honor of his participation in the liberation of Buchenwald, Mr. Langfan lit a candle in Auschwitz for the March of the Living. He received the Palm Beach Synagogue's Lover of Israel Award, and together with his son Mark, he received the Zionist Organization of America's Justice Brandeis Award at their annual dinner. In 2013, Mr. Langfan was awarded the Guardian of Israel Award by Evan Shur at Turnberry Jewish Center. He has donated 4 Sefer Torahs to different shuls in Palm Beach and West Palm Beach. He also contributes annually to his high school, college, law school, and other worthy charities. Mr. Langfan has 3 children, 6 grandchildren, all of whom share his love of Israel and Judaism. And Mr. Langfan is a big advocate and educational resource on the topic of the Palestinian Liberation Organization Charter. And without further ado, Mr. Langfan.
Good evening, everybody. I want to basically talk in a chronological fashion from 1964 through today. In 1964, the Palestinian Liberation Organization was formed with its charter. And this charter, in simple terms, it was 29 clauses, and many of the clauses directly talked about the fact that Palestine is the sole owner of the area, and that nobody else has any rights in the area. And at the time, the area was controlled by Israel and the British and the area that was not under Israeli control was under the control of the Palestinian, not the Palestinians, but it was under the control of Jordan. And out of the blue, the PLO was created. And in 1974, wait a minute, 64, I've got my numbers a little crossed up here. In 1967, Israel, in a 4-day war, took control of the whole area. In 1968, 1 year later, the PLO modified very slightly the charter, and the clauses calling for the destruction of Israel were kept within it. And this existed until the 73 war, at which point the I'm getting a telephone call, but someone else picked it up. In 78, the Palestinians realized that they had to do something. Rather, in 1974, they realized that they had to do something after the Yom Kippur War. And the result was that the PNC, which is the Palestinian National Council, decided to come out with a 10-clause memorandum in which the concept of defeating Israel in phases was created. And this was the way things were until about 1991, when secret negotiations began between the left-leaning Israeli government and the Palestinians. And it eventuated into the first agreement that was ever signed by the PLO and Israel. It all began...
Mr. Langfan, I wanted to ask a question, just a clarification question, if you have a moment.
Yes.
So you're describing that, so the Palestinian Liberation Organization was created in 1964, correct? 3 years before the Six-Day War? Oh, Mr. Langfan?
Yes.
So the PLO, I just wanted to perhaps just chime in, not to interrupt. So you were saying the PLO was created in 1964, 3 years before the Six-Day War?
Yes.
Okay, right. So I just wanted to...
Very few people are aware of that date, but it was 3 years before the 67 war when the whole area, other than the area that Israel was entitled to by the UN resolution of 47. So from 48, actually, 49, there was an armistice between the Israelis and the Arabs, and that remained in existence until 64, when the PLO got into the act. Now, after the Yom Kippur War, the Palestinians arrived at the conclusion that if Jordan, Egypt, and Syria were unable to defeat Israel on a Yom Kippur day, then they must change their thinking completely, and the thinking became to destroy Israel in phases. That remained their policy until around 1991, when secret negotiations began. And in these negotiations, which were done against Israeli law, and if it were the United States, it would have been treason. But eventually, for 2 years, they negotiated and they arrived at a conclusion. And the result was, in September of 1993, Israel had said that we've never been recognized by anyone. So Arafat wrote a letter, or he signed a letter. I discovered that he didn't write the letter. Arafat sent a letter to Prime Minister Rabin, in which he stated that they were going to live side by side in peace. And it was a very dramatic letter that had Israel very excited. But Israel failed to notice one little clause, or this last sentence of the letter specifically stated that this letter will be presented to the Palestinian National Council for their approval. The PLO Charter, Clause 33, very specifically says that no clauses in this charter can be changed unless 2/3 of the membership vote for such a change. Rabin immediately responded and said, we accept the PLO as the bargaining body for the Palestinian people, and based upon Arafat's letter, in September of 93, the DOP was signed, and it was the first signing of an agreement between Israel and Palestinians. And this document stated that they were going to negotiate and that the Palestinians were going to help pacify the people and prevent terrorism, and Israel was going to give specific chunks of the land to the PLO.
Sorry, so Mr. Langfan, a point of question. So, just as a chronology, so the Palestinian Liberation Organization was created in 1964, 3 years before the Six-Day War. So I guess as a side point caveat to our students here, people talk about, the Palestinian Authority being created, in response to Israel's occupation. The Six-Day War, where Israel expanded its land, predated, or rather the PLO predated that by 3 years. So one, I suppose, Mr. Langfan, what you're saying, just to put in our own words as well, in terms of what exactly was the PLO trying to liberate in 1964 before Israel conquered those lands, East Jerusalem, the Golan Heights, and Sinai, and so on?
Their document specifically said, the 64 document specifically said that they were going to liberate Palestine.
Right.
And by saying that they were going to liberate Palestine, they were simply saying that they were going to destroy Israel, because that was the only area that was not under Arab control.
And so in 1993, when the Oslo Accords were signed, sorry, just to make sure I understand. So in the 93, when the Oslo Accords were signed, can you repeat what you were saying about the two-thirds, Article 33, two-thirds that the Palestinian Charter requires two-thirds of the council for an amendment to change that?
The document, the PLO document specifically said that in order for any part of this charter to be changed, two-thirds of the membership must vote for such a change.
So is that one of the reasons then, presumably when the Oslo Accords were signed, Israel would say, hey, listen, Palestinian Liberation Organization, we would love to sign this Oslo Accord with you, but, your founding document calls for the destruction of Israel. Was this two-thirds, component in Article 33 a way that the Palestinians could say, hey, listen, we can't change it so easily? Was that the reason for it?
An excellent question. In 1975, Prime Minister Rabin delivered a speech to the Knesset in which he said, we are all disappointed that the Palestinian National Committee has not executed any document yet. So they put a clause into the agreement known as the interim agreement, which was going to be signed in 96, that 2 months from the inauguration of this new interim agreement, the PLO charter will have been changed. The interim agreement was executed on March 7, 1996, which meant that until 2 months from that date, which was May 7th, 1996, there was an obligation on the part of the PNC to meet and to modify the charter. They did decide to meet in April, the end of April of 96, before they voted, the chairman of the PNC, the Palestinian National Council, delivered a speech. And he said that almost the whole legal committee decided that something has to be done by us. He was evidently referring to clause 31, paragraph 9 of the interim agreement, which stated that the charter had to be changed within 2 months of the signing of the agreement. He said, but we're not going to make it too easy for the Israelis. We're not going to amend the charter. We're going to draw a new charter. And with that, he delivered to all the members of the council who were there, and it was more than the 2/3 necessary. He delivered to them a 2-clause document. Clause 1 stated that they decided to amend the charter pursuant to the exchange of letters between Arafat and Rabin in September of 93. Clause 2 specifically appointed a legal committee to redraft the charter and to present the redrafted charter to the Palestinian Central Council. The Palestinian Central Council was not mentioned in one part or any part of the original charter. That was April 24 of 1996. In October of 1996, the Israeli Foreign Ministry came out with a memo in which they stated that nothing was done in the vote of 96, and it meant that the Palestinians still had the original charter as their mantra, and that they continued their philosophy of destroying Israel. That is the only Palestinian document that was ever signed that dealt with the issue until January of 1998, when the Palestinians and the Israelis were negotiating the Wye River Agreement. And in this letter, Arafat very specifically stated that there's been some doubt pertaining to what happened in April 1996, when the modification of the charter was signed. I'm going to put this question to an end, and the vote was a comprehensive vote to change the charter, and he listed specific clauses that were to be omitted and specific clauses that were to be modified. And that was all that was done. And the document that was being prepared for the execution of both parties for the Wye River Agreement specifically said that the legal committee was going to meet and acknowledge the Arafat letter to President Clinton. And they did meet, and they said, yes, we are for the document. And then there was another clause which said that another committee was going to meet, and they accepted Arafat's letter. But believe it or not, the final clause, that final part of the memo said that all of the leading Palestinian entities were going to meet in front of President Clinton and acknowledge that they accept Arafat's letter to President Clinton, which did happen on December 14, 1998, at which point President Clinton got up and delivered a masterful speech in which he stated, "The people in the streets of Israel thank you for what you have done. You have finally abolished the clauses in your charter calling for the destruction of Israel." And Netanyahu went along with it. And in his book, he said that he worked very diligently and had the PLO acknowledge the changes. Well, they didn't follow the actual words of the charter, but President Clinton bought it. Prime Minister Netanyahu bought it. The New York Times bought it, and basically the world bought it. And it was nothing but a deception created by the Palestinians, which deceived the world.
So, Mr. Langfan, my question is, I mean, how was that able to happen? How was this deception possible where, the Palestinian Authority led by Yasser Arafat said that they would be repealing this hateful article? Obviously they're going through this rigmarole. Why it couldn't be done? It was being done. It wasn't being done. How could they have hoodwinked, the Israeli government, the United States, which was acting as somewhat of an intermediary at the time? How did that happen? I mean, did nobody do their due diligence? How did everybody have the wool pulled over their eyes?
They all fell for it. They felt that everybody, all of the heads of all of the entities, including the PNC, voted almost unanimously by raising their arms and saying we accept Arafat's letter to President Clinton. And as I said earlier, even Prime Minister Netanyahu accepted it. Now, that is one of the things that I want you all to realize, that there was complete deception and nothing has ever been done about it.
So practically speaking then, so, can you maybe give us, Mr. Langfan, a little bit of an understanding in terms of where that leaves us today? The Palestinian Liberation Organization is now the Palestinian Authority. They really don't control Gaza anymore. They control the West Bank. So where is the, where does that sort of leave us now in terms of, the Palestinian Charter?
Leaves us now, in my research, when I was trying to ascertain what the 1996 vote say, I wrote to the Israeli government for the Arabic of the resolution, which they did send to me, and they also sent a document dated 1998 in Arabic. I had it translated, and if you'll bear with me for a moment, I will show you what they said. In this response to me, the Israeli Foreign Ministry quoted from Arafat's letter to President Clinton, and they said these are the clauses which were nullified by the PNC, and these are the clauses that were supposed to be partially nullified. When I saw that, I immediately contacted the Palestinian Foreign Ministry and I asked, is that the policy of the Israeli government today? They never answered. And to my knowledge, that is the only document that exists today in Israel. And it specifically says these are the clauses that were changed. I am mystified by it. I've written to the New York Times. And
so just to clarify, Mr. Langfan, what you're saying is that, sorry, if anybody is not muted, please mute yourself. Mr. Langfan, what you're saying is that even today, the Israeli government, you're saying that it recognizes or it doesn't recognize that this charter still remains intact? You're saying that they haven't necessarily demanded change?
They did not remove that from their publications as far as I have learned. And they're just going along as if there was a change. But there's never been a Palestinian document adhering to Clause 33, which specifically says that any change has taken place in the charter. I've offered $1 million to the first person who can present me with a document indicating what they allege, i.e., the specific clauses that Arafat stated that were nullified, and the changes in the document which specifically state the specific changes that took place in these partially modified documents. I've sent people over to Israel and they tried to get information, and there's no information that they can get other than what I've told you.
So what do you think the prospects for peace are, given that the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the Palestinian Authority, has not really renounced their desire to conquer all of Israel?
Well, I'll go one step further. In addition to the PLO charter, you've got the Hamas charter, which was created in 1988, which was modified last year, and it very specifically says that they're going to destroy Israel. They don't say it in that language, but any reading of it would determine that they're serious and that Israel does not belong there. And the Fatah, which is part of the Palestinian Authority, they in 1994 or 5 created a constitution which stated that they wanted to destroy Israel. They modified that in 2007 with a 2007 charter, but it says the same thing, basically, that Palestine is from the Med to the Jordan River, and that we're supposed to control all the land.
So, I guess if I can, sort of take what you're saying and turn it, I mean, we have a lot of the people on the call here. As I said, I don't know everybody on the call, but many of them are student activists and Hasbara fellows, members of the community and others. Would you say that, if we can educate people in terms of that in a nutshell, that the Palestinian, everybody knows Hamas. I shouldn't say everybody knows, but, Hamas still does not make any attempt to hide its genocidal agenda. But when we talk about the Palestinian Authority being a partner for peace, we can educate people in terms of, this missing PLO, charter amendment, what was supposed to be changed and wasn't, and so on. Would you say that this is something important that people need to know, that will educate people?
It's something important. It's something that goes to the essence of the whole Palestinian issue. That there's never been one word changed in the charter. And if anyone really wants to know what is going on in Israel, he should type in to the computer PMW, Palestinian Media Watch.
We can send this out, by the way. We can send the link out to everybody if you'd like.
Pardon me?
We can send the link out. We can be in touch and send the information out to everybody after.
And if you follow Palestinian Media Watch and Memory, these are two organizations that translate on a daily basis what is being said by the politicians and what is being said on TV and in the newspapers from the Arabic to various languages. you will see that they all adhere to the wiping out of Israel. And why our government and why the Israeli government has not acknowledged this is a mystery. I've written to the New York Times with the illustrations of their newspapers, which stated very clearly that the Palestinians had dropped their clauses to destroy Israel, but it's never happened.
Right, and I think if I can add as well, I suppose to add to what you're saying, Mr. Langfan, we can look, like you said, we can look at the textbooks, we can look at the public information emanating from the mosques and the media under the control of the Palestinian Authority to really see proof positive, like you said, that this narrative of destroying Israel in official channels has not changed.
There's no question about it.
Right. So, I guess definitely this is something that we need to be able to do a better job on campus, in the community, in the media, in terms of educating people about, trusting.
That's it. Each person should have a copy of the charter and a copy of what allegedly was done. And anybody who takes the time to go over these documents can arrive at one conclusion, and one conclusion only, that there was a deception pulled here, and they've gotten away with it thus far. I've changed people's minds when I can sit them down and show them the actual documents, not opinion. I'm not giving my opinion. I'm saying here's what they signed. If you can look at the charter, clause 1, I'm going to read clause 1 to you, and you tell me if you think anything was changed. Clause 1, amend the Palestinian Charter and canceling articles opposing the exchange letters between the PLO and Israeli government on September 9th and 10th, 1993. 2, the PNC assigns the legal committee the responsibility of rewording the Palestinian National Charter, which will later be presented to the PCC during the first meeting. Clause 2 has never been attempted, and Clause 1 refers to an exchange of letters. Now, the exchange of letters, Arafat's letter was very specific, and Rabin's letter of acceptance revolved around what Arafat said. His acceptance was a quick thing in response to your letter of September 9, 1993. I wish to confirm to you that in light of the PLO commitments included in your letter, the government of Israel has decided to recognize the PLO as a representative of the Palestinian people and negotiate with the PLO within the Middle East peace process. These are the only two things that have ever been signed. by the PNC.
Well, I mean, that's quite damning. I mean, we see that, I suppose another thing is that this is a pattern. We talk about 1964 when the Palestinian, PLO charter was created, up until, well, certainly today, the textbooks haven't changed. You talked about documents, Y River Agreement in 98 and so on. We see, I guess, a trend, a pattern for more than 5 decades now. I suppose that means something.
68 from 64, all that they did was knock out clause 24 of the 64 charter, which said that this organization, that's the Palestinian Liberation Organization, does not have any territorial rights in the West Bank and Gaza. They specifically said that in 64. I'll read it to you. This is not opinion. This is actual document itself. Clause 24 of the 64 charter. This organization does not exercise any territorial sovereignty over the West Bank and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, on the Gaza Strip or the Hama area. Its activities will be on the national popular level in the liberational, organizational, political, and financial fields. That clause was knocked out, and where the Palestinian Liberation Organization in their charter, in the 64 charter, where they said that they were going to liberate Palestine, and the 68 charter says that they were going to, via armament, liberate the area.
So in your view then, is there any hope for a modernization of the Palestinian leadership where they're going to say, listen, let's start to realize that we're not going to get, the conquering of Israel?
Well, I'll give you another illustration of Arafat. Arafat signed another agreement with Israel in 1994 of May, early May of 1994. There was the Hebron Agreement, in which they made some agreement on how Hebron was to be handled. 6 days after he signed that agreement, he went down to South Africa and delivered an address to the largest mosque in South Africa. And his verbiage was very clear. He said, we consider the signing of an agreement with Israel to be nothing more than Mohammed's agreement with the Quraysh tribe. Now that agreement sounds like a Baba Misa, but it's not. It was an agreement that was executed when the Quraysh tribe told Arafat that they were happy the way they were. They didn't tell that they told them, Mohammed, that they were happy the way they were and that they didn't want to change their method of living. And Mohammed at that time was not strong enough, so he signed a 10-year peace agreement with them. 2 years later, at a whim, he destroyed the Quraysh tribe.
So you're saying like as a buying time, just like what had happened,
Yes, well,
1,400 years earlier.
Yeah, and if you look at what the Palestinian National Council said in '74 after the Yom Kippur War, they said that we will take what we can, and from there we will continue until we have it all. That's the same Palestinian National Council that is supposed to change the charter. And these are documents, not opinion. Are there any more questions?
If anybody has any questions, I guess one way you could unmute yourself, or alternatively,
call
you could
me.
send me a message.
My phone number is on top of my pamphlet. They can call me at any time, and I'll give them as much time as the conversation exists.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Langfan. As I said, I think that this is an area, there are a few areas when it comes to the backstory of Israel and its relationships with its neighbors that are extremely unknown, not just by the wider community, but even by pro-Israel activists as well. And that includes the PLO charter, absolutely. And I hope that this is the beginning, not the end of the learning journey that we can communicate to our peers. So thank you for your time, and thank you everyone as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Langfan.
Mr. Langfan will pass on everybody's contact information so they can reach out as well.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night, guys.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I reiterate.
Thank you very
much. Thank you.
That everybody should carefully read the PLO Charter, the 2007 Fatah Constitution, and the 2017 latest Hamas Charter, and you'll see right in front of you that they want to take over. And it doesn't belong there.
I'm going to give a recommendation for anyone who's on the call. There was a book written by, it's a compilation by Walter LaCour and Barry Rubin, and it has pretty much every single document that you will ever need to look up.
Could you hold up the book so we can see the title?
Yes, it's called The Israeli Arab Reader, and it has every single document that Mr. Langfan spoke about. The Israeli Arab Reader, it has the 2007 Fatah Constitution, and it has the 1998 Wye River Memorandum Agreement. It has the PLO, the full PLO Charter. It has the 95 PLO supposed that they're the revamped the Oslo II Agreement, which was signed in '96. So anything, it's the Israeli Arab Reader. It's got everything from and it has everything on the Israeli side as well. A must-have for any of you that really want to see the actual documentation, the actual charters in beautiful. It's all in English, all translated. Definitely pick it up.
Amazing.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll send out all these resources that Mr. Langfan spoke about as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Bill.
You're entirely welcome.
All right. We will be in touch soon. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
I'm available at any time.
Fantastic. We will definitely take you up on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
All the best. Good night.
Good night.